The administration continues to gut Social Security right in front of our very eyes. Instead of working to make sure seniors get their hard-earned benefits, Trump must indulge in laying off more than 7,000 Social Security workers.
When any business person comes in and wants to make some changes, they look at the whole picture and they do it in a careful, thoughtful way. That is not what this is.
There's a reason that nearly 90% of Americans agree that Social Security should remain a priority for the nation, no matter the state of budget deficits. That includes 70% of Democrats, 86% of Republicans, and 88% of independents.
We just heard from Democrats worried about the state of Social Security. Joining us now to discuss financial security for retirees, please welcome Thasunda Brown Duckett, CEO of TIAA, in conversation with Betty Liu.
Hi, Thasunda. So great to have you.
Great to be here.
And I know this is a topic, obviously, given your role, that you feel very passionate about, which is Americans needing to be prepared for retirement. And I think I'd like to just remind everyone, and you know this so well, but the idea of saving for retirement is still a relatively new concept here in the U.S. Less than 50-something years old. But if you look at recent surveys, time and again, Americans feel like they're not saving enough, and that we're facing a retirement crisis. So why are we getting to this point?
Well, great. Maybe it's always important to provide context, and I love to frame it in numbers. Today, we currently have a $4 trillion retirement savings gap. We also know that every day, 11,000 people are reaching retirement age. We know that 40% of all Americans run the risk of running out of money. And so when you think about that backdrop, and also acknowledging that women retire with 30% less, we know that number is even more pronounced for people of color. So when we talk about a crisis, it is a crisis. And the reason also is that people are living longer. And so when you think about that liability burden, it's shifting to the daughter, to the son, and to the broader family. So there are three ways in which we think about the challenge, and then what is the job to be done. So first, we have an access gap. We know that 57 million Americans do not have access to a retirement plan that work in the private sector. And that's primarily small business owners with employees of less than 10. And so there's an opportunity to make sure that we can have policy in place to make it easier for small business owners to provide retirement plans for their employees. Secondly, we have a savings gap, and you hit on this. We are not saving enough. And so the job to be done is to make sure that we can design plans, for example, like auto enrollment. When you get your first job, which is what I did when I graduated from college, I maxed out, because whatever I made on Monday was more than what I made on Friday. And so being able to auto-enroll so that everyone has the ability to get started early, they can choose to opt out, but then re-enroll them the next year, because maybe they had a moment in life that should not be permanent if they do not remind themselves to enroll. So auto-enrollment, but also auto-escalation. Because many times when you start contributing to your retirement plan, you may not be able to take the full max. But if we know that we're not saving enough, I think that we can have policy in place in employers to be able to incrementally auto-escalate. Again, you can take it back down, but then auto-escalate you up to that max so that over time you are accumulating enough savings. And then lastly, we have a guarantee gap. We know that in the 70s, 70+% of Americans had a defined benefit, a pension. That number is now less than 12%. Social Security was never designed to provide full replacement. And so when you're on a backdrop of not having guaranteed income, there is an opportunity to make sure that within your retirement plan, you can have an in-plan annuity insurance to complement your stocks and your bonds, so that there is money that you will not outlive, so that there's that guaranteed paycheck to complement Social Security in your broader portfolio performance. So in effect, I think we have a real problem We have a real opportunity to work together in both private and public sector to address the access gap, 57 million Americans, to address the savings gap. How do we make it easier for people to save and to increase their contribution over time? And we have a guaranteed gap. How do we design plans like an in-plan annuity that can be the closest thing to a defined benefit plan that can address longevity risk, give you comparable performance to bonds during accumulation, and ensure that you can have a paycheck? The bottom line when it comes to retirement is income has to be the outcome. And that has to be the focus that we continue to anchor on.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point because I think a lot of that conversation is around the savings and the wealth accumulation, but not so much on, don't forget, you need to have that guaranteed income.
Correct.
Because you don't know how long you're going to live. And hopefully you'll live a long time.
And people are living longer. So
yes.
Yes, longevity risk is a real risk.
And you mentioned the demographics. We had Congressman Schweikert on earlier this morning who was speaking about the same thing. There's a demographic change that's happening that's enormous that we may not all be prepared for. And I'm curious, he also mentioned, business leaders need to show up, and now we know you show up in Washington and you talk to many of these congressional leaders. What do you need from them? What do you need from Congress to do on the policy front to help close that gap and help Americans save more for retirement?
Well, I think it's one, acknowledging that it truly takes a partnership between the private and public sector. And so you're right, we have to continue to engage. What I am excited and encouraged about is that the retirement crisis is not a red state, blue state. It's not a Republican, Democrat, independent. It is all of us. And the reality is, if I polled this room and said how many of us are worried about retirement or how many of us are taking care of our parents or loved ones now within our own income, there's a real issue. And so the good news is that this is a bipartisan issue and something that we have seen progress being made with Secure Act 1.0, 2.0, and now some additional good policies that are on the agenda that's in with Senator Kaine and Senator Cassidy to make it easier. And so what are some of the policies that I am encouraged about and hope that we can get done? One, there's the help the young generation save for retirement, reducing the age to 18, which is again by Senator Cassidy and Senator Kaine, so that younger people can get started with their retirement benefits earlier. There is the re-enrollment opportunity so that at least every 3 years, if not every year, if someone opted out, they can get auto-enrolled back in. That is a really important piece. Additional policy that I think is really important is to make sure that within the retirement plan, you can provide the opportunity not just for liquid annuities, but also illiquid, similar to a defined benefit plan, so that you can have that longer term opportunity to get higher returns because you can invest longer without the liquidity concern. And if the goal is for retirement, some part of that allocation, I believe, can be illiquid so that you can get the opportunity to earn more during the accumulation for it to be able to provide you more income. And so that is good policy in providing the safe harbor. And then lastly, I think there's the opportunity to make sure that there's just more lifetime income solutions within your retirement design plan, making sure that, plan sponsors can have the safe harbor to be able to provide more options for participants to be able to have confidence that as they are taking advantage of their workplace retirement plan, it can give them confidence that they can have income that they cannot outlive. So I am encouraged about the bipartisan support. I think it requires us to continue to engage, which we are. And I think that there's more opportunity for us to really design plans that can work for everyday Americans and give them the confidence that after their years of working, they can take care of their basic needs.
You mentioned earlier about encouraging young people, to start thinking about retirement, start saving for retirement, as young as 18. I'm the mother of two 20-year-old boys,
right.
And me getting them to think about retirement is like the most important.
Bring them to my house.
I think I will. I'll take you up on that invitation. It is difficult because they're dealing with so much else. And, we just had a panel here talking about housing affordability, that they're thinking about how am I even going to afford a house, get a job, all of these things. So how do you get young people to think about retirement?
Well, what I'm encouraged about, and I have some kids too, from 9 to
Bless
19, but they are curious. I think that we think that young people don't care about long-term things. They care about the environment. They care about what's happening around the world. They want to contribute to society. And so I think it's upon us to reframe the frame. You know, if you ask young people what are their hopes and their dreams, they will tell you they want to help their family. I want to help mom have a better outcome. I want to buy her a house. I want to do this. They do not want to transfer the stress to that next generation. And so what do I say to young people? There's a word that I think every young person should know, and it's called compounding. Whether you want a house, whether you want to start your own business, whether you want to have that rainy day fund, whether you want to have confidence in having a secure retirement, compounding addresses all of that. And what that means is that we have to start early. You cannot time the market, but you need to spend time in the market. And if we are helping our young people understand, which they want to understand about investing, that if you are investing over time, you're investing for that moment to buy a home, you're investing for that moment, you know, to have your children or whatever your goals and objectives are. And the benefit about talking about retirement, there are three things that I talk to young people about. One is when you get your first job, take advantage of your benefit plan. If you do not max out, again, it's more money than you made the day before, then you are telling that employer you can have some of that benefit money back. I don't need it. So max out. That is a simple message. I don't think any young adult would say, I'm good. They're going to want to max out if they understand they're leaving money on the table. Secondly, the tax benefit in retirement. And so what that simply means for young people is that dollar that you are investing towards your retirement, which is part of your life plan eventually, it's working harder for you because you're getting the tax benefit. And then lastly, the power of compounding. And so I think it's about us meeting young people where they are. I think it's about asking first the question about their hopes and their dreams and making sure that they can have confidence that they can have a secure future. And then I think it's about making sure we know they want to buy a home, they want to own their own business, they want to do all these things, getting started with investing earlier, taking advantage of tax treatment so that that dollar is working harder for you, and making sure you're not leaving money on the table with your workplace benefit plan. If we can bring that story together, I'm sure your sons will make sure they max out on their first job. And I think they'll understand the power of compounding because you talk about that a lot. And I think over time, people do want to have a secure retirement. They want to be able to have that next chapter in life. And I think we have to talk to the young people now so that they can get the power of compounding over time.
Yeah, I think I'll have to take this snippet here and make sure they see that. And I want to switch gears a little bit from the retirement challenge just to you know, leading this large financial services organization. And there's so much talk about, you know, including what we heard in an earlier panel about technology and AI and leaders leveraging, you know, the latest technology because they know that it's going to be disruptive, and it is disruptive, but also there's also the flip side of that, which are the, you know, the ways to accelerate your business. So how are you leveraging technology at TIAA?
Yeah, I'm excited about technology. I'm excited about AI, agentic AI, and let me tell you why. I always say AI is not going to necessarily take the jobs. It's the lack of embracing that technology that will make you less marketable. And so the way in which we are using AI, I think has been a journey of how we've used technology. So whether it's in our call centers and using AI to make sure we can anticipate participants' needs and questions, being able to provide insight at the fingertips of our employees. With Naveen and Asset Management, investing in AI when you think about reports. You know, we look at all public companies and being able to look at all the earnings and all the research and being able to bring that together in a way that it can prove the value of which our analysts can provide information back to our clients and in the speed that they could do it. I think there's efficiencies that can be gained. I think there's client experience that can be gained. I think the most important thing is to be thoughtful about the investment. I think it's understanding what are the use cases. But I also think as a leader, in addition to talking about the technology, it has to go hand in hand with the culture mindset shift. We have to equally spend a lot of time talking to our employees, making sure that we can get them comfortable with using the tools, understanding the value so that they're not afraid of it. I think the more our associates are using the tools, the more excited they are about the problems that they can solve, about the way that it can support them. And I do think that, yes, there will be disruption in certain jobs, but I also think there will be new jobs also being created. And so making sure that we have the right work skills in place, using AI to identify the skill sets of our employees, to help them understand opportunities, taking them on this journey, I am very excited about. I think ultimately it would allow us to be more efficient, which for us at TIAA allows us to take that and give it right back to our participants to help them have a more dignified retirement. So I do think we have to embrace AI. We are embracing AI, but we're also equally embracing the culture journey that we have to go on to make sure that our people can be just as excited as we are in terms of what the opportunities can present themselves, and making sure that they're prepared for the workplace shift in a way that can give them confidence that they can still have a meaningful career, at our company.
Yeah, I think that's an important point. It's both a tactical and cultural shift.
That's right.
When it talks about integrating, when you talk about integrating these newer technologies
Absolutely.
that are coming at us at a very fast pace these days. Just before we go, give us the picture on the retirement landscape in 15 years. What does it look like, Thasunda?
We need to get started to do more today. I think if I take my optimistic hat, we need to continue to work both in public and private sector as we think about Social Security. We need to ensure that we are designing retirement plans where income is the outcome, where people are not in a position to drain what's supposed to be for retirement, and then by the time they're getting close to retiring, they realize they don't have enough. We can design plans that can give people confidence that they can have income. So when I look forward, my hope is that we will continue to do the work to make it easier for employers to deploy the plans, that we address the 57 million Americans that do not have access to a workplace plan by working closely with small business owners. I think technology can be an unlock and an accelerator on what this can mean. And my hope is that this next generation will be able to invest in a more diversified way so that they are able to have better earnings. And over time, we are addressing this retirement crisis. It's not gonna happen overnight. It will take intentional partnership and engagement, and also educating everyday Americans on what they can do today to change the outcome of tomorrow. But if we don't put a full court press on this, we will continue to transfer the burden on families. And that burden on families in an intergenerational time where more people are living longer, that dollar that a family has in their budget is going to have to then be allocated to not just mom, but grandmother, in addition to their children. So we have to do the work. I remain optimistic, given that this is a bipartisan issue, given that there's a lot more conversation about it, given that there's technology that can bring more awareness and a lot more investment solutions that can generate higher returns during accumulation, but confidence that income can be the outcome. So optimistic, but I'm only optimistic to the extent that we're all willing to do the work.
Right, that there's action today.
There has to be action today.
Thasunda, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate this conversation.
Thank you.